Welcome to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership, where you'll hear insights and useful strategies, as well as lessons learned from other nonprofit leaders and valuable tips from a variety of experts. Here to help you with the challenges and opportunities you face day after day is your host and nonprofit leadership expert, Sarah Olivieri.
Hello, nonprofit leaders, and welcome to your go-to place for information and inspiration to help you be even more effective. I'm your host, Sarah Olivieri, and you're listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. I have a special guest for you for this episode, Rebecca Reiner, who has put a lifetime of heart into humanitarianism, activism, and stewardship. And she is the executive director of Sincere Foundation, where she leads grant review and is excited to collaborate with organizations that do critical work in their communities. Prior to joining the foundation, Rebecca led fundraising efforts for nonprofits in the greater Boston area. She has a degree in women's studies and sociology from Mount Holyoke College. And now in her role with Sincere, they build technology that brings you closer and helps show you how to care to the people that matter most, bring care to the people who matter most. With the Sincere Foundation, the company supports organizations and programs that address basic needs like food security, housing stability, and safe spaces. Welcome, Rebecca. Before we dive into all things nonprofit leadership and foundations, would you just share something about yourself personally to round yourself out as a whole person for our audience?
Sure. Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to have this conversation. A little something about me. I have been working in the nonprofit sector for my entire career. So 20 plus years. I, as you said, have a women's studies and sociology degree. And what does one do with those degrees? One looks for organizations that want to help other people. I am also a mom. I have a blended family, so 4 kids that keep me on my toes and bring meaning to the work that I do, working with organizations and trying to address basic needs in our communities.
I love it. So Sincere Foundation is a private foundation, and I know there are various nonprofits who have the word foundation in their name, but they don't all function the same way. So what does it mean to be a private foundation? Let's just start with the basics there in your case.
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't fundraise. We are simply a corporate foundation. And the IRS doesn't really have a designation between corporate foundation and private grant making foundation. So it's just all under the umbrella of private foundations. But as a corporate foundation, our money comes from Sincere Corporation. Obviously, the name Sincere Foundation. We are funded exclusively by the corporation, and therefore we are also governed by the people who are on our board at this point are people from Sincere Corporation. And when we started the foundation, it was with the eye towards how does the foundation help amplify the corporation?
I love it. Yep.
So the two work
I love
in
it.
tandem.
For those out there, I don't usually have it in my bio. I was once the first executive director of a corporately sponsored foundation. So, and same kind of setup. In fact, my office was even as the small organization, they were just getting started, was in the corporation's office, and I shared one of their secretaries and such for my work. So excellent explanation.
Yes.
So can you start by telling us a little bit about that process of starting up a private foundation from scratch?
Yeah. Well, I mean, fortunately, we were able to work with a group called the Foundation Group that helped us navigate the paperwork and all of those things. So all we really had to do on our side of things was say, okay, how much money are we going to start with? How much money does the corporation have to put into this foundation? And how are we going to give it away? So, it was really a fun task, especially for someone whose background is in fundraising, to say, okay, what kind of things are we going to support? The foundation was born a little bit of the recognition that the corporation didn't really have a dedicated method for giving away money. They were responding to requests as they came in. They had a lot of community requests. There were things that people liked, who worked at the company who said, oh, this might be good to fund. and recognizing that they needed to be a little more focused and dedicated about how that was happening.
Yeah.
And so really starting it from nothing was saying, okay, what are we going to support? It was recognizing that we needed to be able to say no to some things and have clear guidelines for people seeking funding, because that's only fair both to the funder and the people seeking funding. And we needed to clearly explain what we were going to fund. So it really was a lot of conversations to say, what makes sense? What makes sense? Sincere Corporation is about, making memories, celebrations and milestones in people's lives. And as we talked, it's a digital company. So there was some conversation about, do we fund something around the environment? We're a digital company trying to, come away from paper for greeting cards and invitations, but as we talked more and more and recognized how great the need is in our communities right now for basic needs, this idea of celebrating, memories and milestones, you can really only do that if your basic needs are beat, right? If you don't know where your next meal is coming from, if you don't know where you're going to live next month, tomorrow, for example, if you're not feeling safe in the community where you live, all that stuff doesn't matter. So we envision a world where everybody has those basic needs met so that they can remember and celebrate all the things that come along in life, like those of us who are privileged to do so.
I love it. So you come from a receiving background, the receiving of fun. What were the things that you brought from that you wanted to make sure were respected or recognized or kind of improved the grant receiving process and application process as you'd experienced on the other side?
Yeah, well, thanks for thanks for that question, because that is definitely an ethos that I brought to this role. From the very outset, I said to everyone, we're doing general operating support, because as a fundraiser, I was so tired of finding available funds and then saying, oh, we'd be so good, except for we'd have to create a program to do it. And that's not what we should be doing as an organization. We should be focusing on the work that we do well and continue to do that. So I really want and hope that more foundations are moving into trusting the organization to say, here's what we need. This is our greatest need, and this is what we need funded. So one of the things I brought is we're doing general operating support. We will do programmatic support if that's what the request is, but it is, I want general operating. I trust the organizations to tell us this is our greatest need and this is where we need funding. And we will use it wisely, right? So many times foundations won't fund staffing or things. Well, you can't do all these wonderful programs and things if you can't pay your staff. So I was 100% of we're doing that.
Did you get any push?
Also,
I'm curious.
Not really, because, one of the things that has been, as I say to everyone, it's been a wonderful learning experience. The people from the corporation who are on the grant review committee, on the board, don't have a lot of experience with nonprofits in their roles now. So I've been able to really bring some education about how the nonprofit world works to them and to say, here are some other foundations you can look at. Here are some other organizations you can see to see that this isn't crazy. We are seeing a trend in this direction, and bring that personal experience to say it really is helpful. And I know from experience, I know from doing this work and asking for money for the past 20 years, that this is really what organizations need. And so one of the other things was, an arduous grant proposal and application process. I wanted to try and slim that down, because I understand, especially that the grant size we're giving is relatively small compared to, we have an average grant size of about $10,000. So we're looking at organizations that have a smaller overall mid-size range to small range budget, who don't have maybe a 5 to 10 person development staff, right? Who the executive director may also be writing the proposals. So I didn't want this to be something that was going to be very arduous for organizations to make the application. Obviously we ask for some supplementary information because we want to make sure that all the ducks are in a row, but hopefully people come to our website and see the grant application process and think, oh, this is pretty clear. This is straightforward. This won't be too
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. So you've made it, a good return on investment, let's say, for the application process to actually receiving the funds. I love not just that, general operating support, but I love that you said trust, because I think that, when I've explained to major donors or foundations why their gifts should be unrestricted, it's always like, hey, if you don't trust them to spend wisely, then you shouldn't be giving to them, period. And if you do, like,
Right.
why would you think you know better how to spend their money? If you went to a
Exactly.
for-profit company and gave them money and said, but you can only spend it on X, Y, and Z, they'd be like, no way. Like, that,
Yeah.
that doesn't
Right.
make any sense
Right.
at all. Like, you're going to force us into being a bad business. So I love that you brought up that
Yeah.
concept of trust. But then you potentially open up the problem of, everybody's going to want to apply for money. So how do you deal with that problem, or what other problems have come up if that's not the big?
Well, one of the things when we were setting it up, I said we need to be very clear about what we won't fund as well, because there's nothing worse than an organization going through and submitting an application and then us looking at it, or me looking at it and saying, you don't fit the criteria. So I wanted to make sure that was very clear on our website. But I will say, one of the hardest things has been there are so many good proposals, right? There are just so many good organizations who are doing really critical work in the community. And, we have limited resources. I wish we could fund every proposal that comes through in our deadline. So the hardest part has really been making those final decisions as our grant review committee comes together to say, we can't fund them all. Which ones are going to be the ones that are the finalists and the grant awardees this round? And so our ultimate vision is to just keep getting, growing the foundation. So it is, but there will be more resources and more money to award for
Yeah.
each cycle.
What makes a really exciting grant application?
The best ones are the ones that really tell a story and evoke the emotion, right? Fundraising is emotional, isn't it? You are doing donors are giving because we strike some emotional chord with them. And it's the same when you're reading proposals. You'll get proposals that are, and the committee has said this to me, that are just dry numbers. The ones that really tell and effectively communicate the story, not just of the mission of the organization, but of the population that is receiving the, the care, the programs, the help. When that is really clear and made very personal in a proposal, the grant review committee automatically responds to it.
Yeah.
So I remind folks I encourage organizations to call us and talk with me before they submit a proposal. I just think having that, even if it's 10 to 15-minute conversation to ask questions about the foundation or, tell a little bit more about the organization is just helpful. Well, for me as a reviewer to get that sort of personal connection, but also hopefully for the organization to ask any questions to say, well, I wasn't really clear on this, and not feel like they are navigating it in the dark. And that personal touch really is significant. I'm very glad. I'm happy to field lots of phone calls up into the deadline of people saying, we want to do this, but we wanted to make sure we touched base with you. And so really the personal part of submitting a grant application, I hope that more organizations don't overlook that. It is important.
And now that you are on the grant giving side of things, what lessons have you learned that you wish you knew when you were on the grant receiving side?
Well, the phone call. There were a lot of times where I thought, well, I'll just click this button, submit, I'll be done, and off my to-do list, right? So that of saying, yes, I'm not bothering anyone. If they invite us to call, if they invite us to reach out, I'm not causing a problem, and that's good. And just really being a little more loose with with how I'm writing a proposal. It doesn't have to be all facts and figures. It can be something that has personality in it. Those proposals that really communicate the personality of the organization, not just the work that they're doing, are so much more fun to read, right? And hopefully more fun to write. So that is one piece of advice I give people, like make sure the personality comes through. And also Sincere Corporation has a personality. If you look at it before you submit anything, and I encourage people, if you're applying to a corporate foundation, make sure you understand the company behind the foundation. There's a distinct personality of Sincere, and it's playful. So to understand that it's playful, to have some playfulness in a proposal will obviously be something that is happily accepted by the
I love that.
foundation.
You've applied them to branding. And if for anybody, if you Google brand archetypes, pictures will come up, but they help you think about like, what is the character type? And then you can start to really match yourself with brands. So if you're doing corporate sponsorship or individuals, I had a client's archetype. So send them a save us message, right? And they did. And boom, the money came back like crazy. And I'm sure, anybody, if you just go to Sincere's website and you pull up your little brand archetype chart, they're usually in a circle, you will probably pretty quickly identify like this is kind of organization. You can apply it to donors as well as foundations, like what they're all about. So I think that's really, really great advice.
I mean, one of the things we put on our grant application is a bonus question of tell us what Muppet from the original Muppet Show best represents your organization. Now, this is kind of a strange question, but it came from the CEO of Sincere Corporation loves the Muppet. It is a question they ask candidates who are applying to the company, and they said, well, let's do it for the foundation too and see what people say. We've gotten some really wonderful and creative responses. But to really have fun with that, to understand, like, and if you look at again, you're talking about, doing the research and seeing the brand archetype, you will see that the Muppets appear. And so to really have fun with that question, that'll take you a long way.
I love that. I love that. And what a way, so often when we give somebody a constraint, like the Muppets, right? What Muppet would you be? It opens us up to be super creative. Actually. So, sometimes we think like, oh, we need freedom to be creative. Actually, a constraint and a challenge around the constraint gets people to really open up. I want to go back to the general operating expense applications. I do really support this trend. I think it's a great idea. And I'm really pleased that you brought that to the Sincere Foundation, but still it's less common. So I'm wondering if you can talk us through, what an application for general support looks like. And I'm sure you put a lot of thought into this as you created your application. And what are some of the things for people who are maybe used to putting in applications for programmatic support, restricted support, what kinds of things they could let go of?
Yeah. Well, for a general operating support, we really just want you to talk a little bit about your organization. Tell us the highlights of the programs that you already do and are doing well. Tell us a little bit about the staff that you've assembled or volunteers to make those programs happen. And tell us about the population that benefits from the work that you do. It doesn't have to be this program benefits here, this program. It can be sort of an umbrella conversation of like, we work with these groups, we serve this many. We are really interested more in the macro than the micro level, right? Right, because that's what they're doing. The organization isn't necessarily looking just at this program or this program. You have to take an overall approach. And I wish more foundations would also come along with that, saying like, we are looking at it holistically for the organization, that they have this program that maybe receives a lot of attention, but it only does because they have these other things in place that are happening. And that may be very well funded because it is the darling of the organization, but it means that these other things that are very integral to making sure that all this other wonderful stuff happens is harder to fundraise for. So the application process really is saying, tell us, give us your best elevator pitch of the organization. We limit the application to 3 pages, so it's not a lot of time, but it is enough to say, this is our mission. This is why we're doing it. This is who benefits. And it doesn't have to be very detailed about all the programs, but really communicating why the community benefits from all these programs. That's what's important. And that's what we want to get to,
Yeah,
overall.
I love it. I want to think a little bit about from the context of being a corporate sponsor or corporate funded foundation. Do you think that brings a different element to your giving compared to, let's say, a family funded foundation?
Yeah. The reality is that, yes, it does. I mean, in the way that a family funded foundation may narrow down how they give because these are, the family members are passionate about certain causes. The reality is that as a corporation, we also have to use the lens of what is the organization we're funding and how does that reflect back on the corporation? How's that going to reflect back to consumers who are interacting with Sincere Corporation? If they find Sincere Foundation and find out that we've funded X, Y, or Z, it is just a reality of being a corporate foundation that we aren't giving in a vacuum, that it is part of the mission of the foundation is not just to help organizations, but it is also to raise the profile of the
Right.
corporation, right? So that is part of how we strategize when we're, making final decisions.
Yeah,
about great
I think
teams.
that's so revealing and helpful. And for anybody out there, if you're going, oh, no judgment. Like this is a great, all donors, all supporters, I believe, want to be able to say, I help make that happen. And for individuals, it's often because for their own ego, that feels really good, their own sense of, accomplishment. And for businesses, it's really important for their employees to be able to say, the company I work for helped make that happen. For their customers to say, the company I bought from helped make that happen. And it's like just a win-win-win. It's not like a taking of anything, but I think recognizing that can be really helpful for nonprofit leaders who are thinking about their application and what's a good fit and what kinds of foundations they get funding from. I have one more question that's kind of deviates a little, but have you thought
Yeah.
through as a foundation whether or not you would give recurring funds? And if so, what was that process?
Yeah, and that question has come up. And, some people in the very beginning asked, do we want to limit that? Do we want to? And I said, we have nothing to go on so far. We have no idea how many proposals we'll be getting. Let's not limit ourselves before we even get started. I believe we will need to start putting those in place because we are getting more and more applications, and it is just recognizing the limitations of our resources. And also, I think it is, as I've said before, it's only fair to people who are applying to understand that we have limitations and what we can do. We have had conversations about will we do recurring gifts of saying, we make a pledge to you that we will give X amount over the next 3 years, and then maybe tell organizations they have to take a break because we don't want to be sustaining funders. We want to be in the space where we are helping you elevate your fundraising, and hopefully that helps you springboard into other things. We haven't gotten there yet because we've only been around for a year and a half. And so we are just now in our third grant cycle. But it is becoming more clear to us that we need to have more of those conversations and put some parameters in place, that allow our organizations to plan better for themselves, right? To know, like, if you've gotten funding from us, say either for the last 3 years, you may have to take a break, or there is going to be a potential to ask for a recurring gift that will happen. We will fund you for 4 years and then we're done. But we hadn't gotten there yet. We talked about it in the very beginning as we were setting things up, but it was anybody's guess what we would be getting in terms of applications as brand new foundation. So we didn't limit ourselves in the very
I
beginning.
want to just go there, even though we're kind of at time, because I think so many people feel like, oh, foundations are so clobbered with, but it sounds like there was a moment of, will anybody find us? Yeah,
Yes,
tell us about
there was
that.
absolutely a moment of, well, who's going to know? I mean, so Sincere Foundation launched when Sincere Corporation, so there was a rebranding. Sincere Corporation has 3 and now 4 consumer brands. People may know Punchbowl, which does digital invitations and greeting cards, Memento, which is group videos, and Time Hop, which is photo memories. And when they launched, it was everybody knew Punchbowl, but Sincere was created out of nothing, right? To be the parent brand of the consumer brand. And there is now a wedding Lovebird, a wedding consumer brand. So it was like, well, Sincere Corporation is brand new and Sincere Foundation is brand new. Who's going to make the connection? Who's going to know about us? And there really was this moment of like, is anyone going to send us an application? Well, we hope so. And we did a lot of talking about how do we market the foundation so that the people who need money know to come to us. Because that was really, it was like, where do we advertise to let people know we have money to give? Please ask us, which was very strange for me being on the other side. I've always been like, where do I find the donors? To say, where do I find the requests was an interesting moment.
I love that. Well, I think that brings us to a perfect spot. Who should get in touch? How should they get in touch? And any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Yeah. Well, we hope, we fund, as you mentioned in the introduction, we fund organizations that address food security, housing stability, and safe spaces. So any organization doing that work in Massachusetts is invited to apply. We are a digital company, so we prefer emails as first, and you can find that contact information on our website, sincere.com/foundation for the foundation. And you can see what other organizations have been funded and ask any. I'm happy to answer any emails and questions for people if they are not sure if they fit or are not ready yet and want to prepare. Please ask me.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for making the foundation what it is, bringing your guidance to it, and all that you're doing at the Sincere Foundation. And thank you out there for listening and for all that you do to make our communities better. This podcast is here to help people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders. I want to help you unleash your full potential to advance the missions that I know you care about so deeply. I've been an executive director, a board member, and now I'm a consultant and coach, so I know your challenges firsthand, which is why I bring you special guests like Rebecca today, as well as the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you can get bite-sized, actionable tips in your email inbox every week. And you can access that at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. Until next time, take care of yourself, take some time for self-care, and be sure to subscribe and listen to the next episode of Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. And if you're not driving or other activity while you're listening to this, it really helps if you leave a review for this podcast on whatever platform you listen to it on. Until next time, all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.